All right, welcome to the Stream Team Show. My name is John Santucci. Call me Tooch. We got a great show tonight and a special guest. We're gonna be talking Wheel of Time, episode 6, with the gang all here. We got Sarah, Aaron, and Rebecca from Reading the Pattern. So excited to talk Wheel of Time with someone who knows the story inside and out. Let's get down to a little bit of what you guys are watching, and I will start with Sarah.
I have seen Don't Look Up, which is in theaters now and is coming to Netflix on, I want to say December 21st or December 24th, like right before Christmas. It's the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence about a comet hitting the world. And it's not good. Total miss. I was rooting for the comet to destroy me as I was watching it. I don't know how you strike out with the cast that it has, because it also includes like Kate Blanchett and Timothée Chalamet and Rob Morgan. It's just like an incredible ensemble cast, but it's not good. But also Witcher season 2 is coming this Friday, and it's really good. If you liked season 1, it is better. They do away with the nonlinear timeline, so it's just less confusing all the way around. And they also kind of I think they sort of feel like you stuck it out through the first season, and the first season now really feels kind of like a prologue, because season 2 is in it. It is the Witcher story of Geralt and Ciri together, training, monster hunting, looking for Yennefer. And that's kind of I think the Witcher story most people are familiar with is that dynamic. They clearly, even though The Witcher was an expensive show, season 1, they've clearly upped the budget. Like, they've spent some more money on it. It looks tremendously good. And also, like, as much as I enjoyed Henry Cavill just being kind of monosyllabic and grunting his way through the first season, he's a little more talkative this time. And it's kind of nice that he's actually getting to do a little bit more like character work as Geralt. So I would say that even though I enjoyed season 1, season 2 feels like a big leap. Like, it feels like a pretty huge improvement. But I would kind of be curious if anyone didn't see season 1, if they could just drop into season 2 and kind of go with it. Because it feels a little bit like a reset, since it's a new format, like without the nonlinear. I mean, since it's now just like a linear timeline. I wish I could find someone who didn't see season 1 and be like, okay, just start season 2 and tell me how that works for you. Because I feel like you could almost just skip season 1. You shouldn't, but you could.
Very cool. Aaron, what are you watching right now?
I've been watching anytime a new show that we like on Netflix with my girlfriend comes out, we watch. If it's not ridiculous, we're trying to watch the previous seasons, and we're actually busting through Lost in Space. We're a couple episodes into Lost in Space right now, season 3. We just rewatched 1 and 2, and I'm actually enjoying it much more the second watch through. We're, like I said, I can't, maybe halfway through. I mean, this is one of those things we were talking off there. It's only got 8 episodes in season 3, which I think is the last season. So it's kind of a bummer that the previous 2 ones had 10, but Lost in Space only season 3, like what could be the end of it, only has 8. The other thing I'm checking out on Amazon, something I've scrolled by 1,000 times and finally decided to check it out, was a movie called Monsters of Men. And it's basically about, it kind of starts off the movie saying everybody wants a military contract, and these group of 3 individuals created the AI system, which of course military takes and puts into some robots that they're testing capability, but the robots get dropped in, and then obviously the military takes over, and it's like they start hunting down like a group of doctors that are in Cambodia instead of like drug people. So it's actually been pretty cool. The animation on it's been great.
Very cool. Last week, I mentioned The Power of the Dog, and of course, before that, King Richard. This week, I watched The Unforgivable with Sandra Bullock, which I didn't expect much, but ended up enjoying it. Not as much as, say, The Power of the Dog or King Richard, but 3 pretty good movies in a row for me in 1 week, in 3 weeks. But go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, you just said movies, and I'm like, there was something I did want to mention. There are 2 movies. One is on Amazon or anywhere you rent online, Google Play, Amazon, whatever you use. I think you can rent it for like $7 in the US. It's called The Beta Test. It's from a filmmaker named Jim Cummings. He co-wrote, co-directed, and co-stars with PJ McCabe. Jim Cummings is on my list of like filmmakers you should know. Like this dude's going to be a big deal, so get on that train early. This is his latest movie. It came out earlier this year. It's a Hollywood satire, but it's really made outside the system. Like they partially crowdfunded it, and so it actually has some teeth. Like sometimes they do Hollywood satires, and you're like, that's not really that harsh. This one's pretty harsh. It's also just a really, really good movie, kind of about power and power dynamics and just desperate people doing desperate things.
Wow, that would have been a great segue. Power dynamics in the Wheel of Time. This episode 6, which I guess we could get started right. We're keeping Rebecca. She's not watching anything anyway. She's just breaking down Wheel of Time and getting back into the books.
Completely busy.
Recapping the books. Rebecca, how are you?
I'm good. I'm definitely enjoying the show. I'm excited to talk about it. But yes, it is definitely consuming any free time that I might have to be making videos about each episode on my channel. So
I wanted to give some chance for some people to get into the chat room. Of course, I know your fans will probably be coming in soon as we get that tweet out there. And as well, I enjoyed this episode. Episode 5 was a bit of a letdown for me. I thought it was probably the worst episode of the series. This one I actually kind of enjoyed because it was a lot of character development, which we talked about last week as something that the show has been lacking. And I love the origin story, the backstory of Sawan, who we get to meet for the first time. And she is played by this lovely lady, Sophie Okonedo, adding more star power to the cast. So we talked about perhaps the show lacking some star power last week.
Yeah, if you watch British TV, Sophie Okonedo is in everything.
Yep. And we have Rosamund Pike, Daniel Henney, and I forget the actor who plays Tom Mayer. I think Alexander Villaume or something is his name, Villaume. And Sophie Okonedo now. So we got a pretty good cast. We also get to know a little bit more about her. The actress.
Fleetwood. Awesome.
Right. Another great actress who every time I see her, I can't help but think of this guy with that chin. I'm sorry.
He doesn't have enough cheekbones. She's all about the cheekbones.
Right. Yeah. I probably just spoiled the show for a bunch of people, but I can't help it. She's got that gigantic jaw area. But I enjoy her character a lot, man. She is a schemer.
And I think I almost know her name. I feel like her name is Leandra.
Leandrin, yep. Exactly.
Close
Very
enough.
good.
Yep. I'm only ever going to remember Leandra. So
right. You get a little bit of the inner working politics of the White Tower. And can you tell us, Rebecca, tell us what the Amerlin seat is besides just a chair?
Okay. Well, yeah, and as pointed out in the episode, it could be confusing because they call the literal seat the Amerlin seat, and then also the woman who holds the title is the Amerlin seat. So she is the leader of the White Tower. She leads the Aes Sedai. As you can pick up on, from the other groups of Aes Sedai, we've seen almost everyone, aside from the Amerlin seat, belongs to an Aja. So, red, green, blue, all the different colors that these women are wearing all the time correspond to their Ajas. And the Amerlin seat is an Aes Sedai, so she was, raised from an Aja. And they mentioned that in this case, Siuan Sanche used to be blue. But when you become Amerlin seat, you are of all Ajas and none. So that's why she just kind of has her own color scheme that she wears. She's not in an Aja anymore. And then the woman that you saw who had like the big staff that she was like banging in the hall, that's her keeper of the chronicles. She is also now does not belong to an Aja because she's raised along with the Amerlin seat. So she's the prime authority in the White Tower.
Which seems like kind of a shitty place. Like it looks beautiful, but it just seems like
absolutely.
I get why Nynaeve is just like, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you think about it, like, so she's like the most powerful woman in the world, literally, but like in her own
About to die.
sphere, she's not safe. She doesn't like, she has to worry about all these factions and whether they support her or don't support her. And you can kind of tell in this episode that she's in a tenuous position politically, despite this extreme power that she holds. So yeah, there's some very big downsides to being in that role.
Yeah, I agree with Sarah. It's kind of this like place where you got to watch your back all the time. It would make me a nervous wreck.
Anywhere that's the center of power in a fantasy story just seems like it sucks. Like the Red Keep, this place, they all just seem like they suck. I'm like, I just want to hang out at like cool inns and pubs and like libraries. Like I just want to go with that goat guy to the library.
Don't you all? Yeah, hang out with Loyal in the library, or join the Tuatha, the traveling people with their colorful wagons. Like these are the places.
It also seems like they're subjected to a lot of like bigotry, and also like their whole like leaf thing of like, oh, we're pacifists. I could never do that. I could never do that.
Flat back.
I'd probably be joining them, or hanging with Loyal in the library also sounds like the place to be.
I love it. Yeah, the White Tower, all those round circular rooms with all the ornate carvery.
It looks
just
amazing.
Beautiful. Yeah, it looks amazing, especially when Moraine was sitting there. The room that Moraine was sitting there having her tea. I was like, I want to hang there. That would be my
if
perfect
it wasn't
place for me,
the center of like nightmare politics, it would be an awesome place to live.
Yeah. But the sets are gorgeous, and especially in this episode, since we're seeing more of the city, and I guess the past couple of episodes, but yeah.
And so the city Tar-Valon, right, and the White Tower is the building that dominates that view, correct? And then there's the mountain,
the rather phallic-looking, very large structure in the city.
There's a big mountain in the background, which Rand comments on as well in episode 5, I think.
Yeah. And they really haven't, I don't know that they've talked much about the name of that mountain in the show, but if you, I don't know if you guys are paying attention to, like, as you're watching, like, if you're kind of hovering over the screen, it will give you, like, trivia and, like, just background information and stuff like that, and then there's extra features, too, that have some of this information. So,
I mean, I have to stop calling my TV smart.
So in that, it does tell you, this is Dragon Mount. That's the name of that.
Dragon Mount,
but it hasn't really been, I don't think it's really been said.
And there's prophecy that goes along with the Dragon Mount, I believe. I don't want to.
With a name like Dragon Mount, I would imagine. Yeah.
Yes.
I do kind of wonder, because they seem to be going a little bit easy on the prophecy stuff.
Yeah.
And I do kind of wonder if this is the legacy of Game of Thrones that went hard on prophecy stuff that just didn't matter in the end, and everybody went boo. So now I feel like they're kind of like, let's tread a little bit lightly around the prophecy stuff, not overextend expectations.
Except that prophecy plays such an important part in the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, I assume as they go along and this gets deeper, like more and more of that will tease out.
Yeah, I think if anything, it's more that they're just trying to ease people into it. For one thing, like, let's not drop like a brick of prophecy on people at once. But as I mentioned when I was on with you guys before, like, prophecy is really written into the fabric of this story in a way that I guess it wasn't with Game of Thrones. So, it's very different in that regard. But yes, I think they're just trying to ease people in a little bit and also not give overly much, because they're also kind of like keeping some things a mystery that are not as mysterious in the first book. So,
sure.
I do feel like the setup of Game of Thrones, and if George R.R. Martin ever finishes those books, which I don't think he will, but if he does, he started out, and it's because of stuff like Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings and these big epic fantasy series that are working on a story engine that's very, very old. It goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks and the earliest stories people told around campfires, is to take those, because prophecy is always such a big deal in stories like this, and it's to take it and to turn that trope over on its head and to kind of make it, to break the trope essentially. And that's why he sets up these prophecies, which I think in the books people have said they're not maybe quite as big of a deal as they were in the show, or at least in the early books maybe. Anyway, they set it up as like, oh, it's a big deal. The prince who was promised. What's going on? And then it's just like, oh, but all it is that he can walk past a dragon. Like that's it. That's the whole thing. Is that this one guy can walk past a dragon on this one night and do this one thing that no one else is going to witness.
Or
that's-
maybe he just does that because he's a Targaryen. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah.
But Martin, I don't think had any idea either. I got to be honest.
No,
with you.
I will give him this credit because I have not read his books, but I have listened to him talk about writing a lot and his philosophy of storytelling. And I really do believe like he thinks, I don't think you can write books this big. If you're Robert Jordan, if you're George R. R. Martin, if you're Robert Asprin, if you're writing these huge books, even, I mean, I think the other side of the coin is J.K. Rowling, who wrote some pretty substantial books, but actually didn't think about some things all the way through, and then tried to like retcon some stuff outside the actual books in ways that haven't really mattered or played out. And but I think those guys, I think they do think about it. I think they do plan a lot. And I think part of Martin's problem specifically is that he's trying to change his plan. He's already like 5 books deep. And it's a little late.
Yeah.
His plan was stupid.
While we're talking about fantasy writers, just wanted to pass on a note that Anne Rice passed away, to author of the Vampire
No
Diaries.
No,
Hats
not
off.
the Vampire
Just,
Diaries.
Hats off to the Vampire Queen. No, she didn't write the Vampire Diaries.
I'm sorry. Interview with the Vampire. Goodness gracious.
There you go. Vampire Diaries is a different.
Yeah, the Blood Canticle and the Mayfair Witches and the Interview with the Vampire. I really think Lestat is one of the great American literature characters of the 20th century. So big hats off to her.
Excellent. So the backstory, I'm getting back to the backstory of Swan, which humanizes the character a little bit for us. I wish, don't you wish they had done that with the 4 friends from the 2 rivers and perhaps even Nynaeve as well, Rebecca?
I do wish, not necessarily that we'd gotten like exactly what they did here with Swan,
right?
Because I think these are different types of characters. I mean, what was beautiful about the way they did it with Swan is you immediately cut from who she was as a girl to the public persona that she has, and as you're watching that public persona of her in the hall, it's hard to see the girl in there. But then you get more episodes of her throughout, more scenes of her throughout the episode. And in each one, you see different layers of her. And then you can start to see more of that girl. And so, I mean, I really enjoyed just seeing all the different like versions of Swan in this one episode. And Sophie Okonedo is wonderful. So I just, it was great. I think with the young characters from the 2 rivers, they don't have that level of like depth in their history yet because they're young, and up until recently they lived in this tiny little mountain village and they didn't go anywhere. So, but on the other hand, I do think, one thing that didn't work as well for me in this episode is just that I feel like we were missing a little bit with some of those characters. That I loved a lot of the things that we got in this episode, but in particular, I would say like Matt and Rand, we haven't had as much from them in the past couple of episodes, and I felt like I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of them. Like I think that episode 5 had some great scenes with Nynaeve, had some great scenes with Perrin and Egwene, but we have to go back to like episode 4 to get like, I think, solid scenes with Matt or Rand. So that's just kind of dropped out a little bit for me.
Right. We do have some people in the chat room starting to drop comments now. From Jeff Hanvey. He says, I'm not opposed to the lesbian storyline, but it kind of tears apart much of Tom's motivations presented in the books.
Who is Tom?
Tom is the Glee man, the one who
this
cool old music
book
guy.
spoilers to talk about this, so I don't know if we're really doing that. So I mean, this is like way ahead in the books. So you can like comment on that.
We don't have to comment on it. I want to talk a little bit about Matt and Sarah and Aaron and I had to like explain to him that the dagger was making him sick.
Yeah, I never.
And
if
they
Tooch hadn't told me that, I never would have.
It completely went over their heads.
I think that's fine in terms of like what the show. Like, I think they wanted it to be a little unclear what was happening until like, I mean, this scene in this episode where Maureen is like, oh, you stupid boy, like you took this from Shadar Logoth, and then she like pulls that crap out of him. Like if you didn't know up until then that it was the dagger that was making him sick, like I think the show is okay with that. Like I don't think they needed you to know that until then. Like they misdirect by having Tom think that he can channel.
Or Rand,
and then Rand thinks.
Oh, Tom. Okay, Tom.
So
and Rand.
like it's a misdirection. So I think that's on purpose.
All right. And now, while we're staying on Matt, Barney Harris, of course, will not be in season 2, I believe.
That's so weird.
And
he's been recast.
To me, he's the best of the kids, of the best actor of the 4 or 5 kids. The other ones are a bit wooden to me. And then he's going to be gone. I don't get it, and I don't know what the effect will be on viewers. I mean, will they just be like, oh, okay, it's just another guy, but it's still Matt.
I kind of feel like we haven't spent so much time with him that people might not notice. Like, I'm not sure it's going to be that dramatic of a shift.
I mean, also, I will say that, like, just in terms of like the direction his like the character's story goes. I mean, for me, I did not like Matt as a character in the books, in the first 2 books. I only started liking him as a character in book 3, which we haven't gotten into that material yet in the show. And it was a big shift for me. Like, I did not like him, and then I loved him. Like, it was not subtle. So in that sense, like, we could play into that, right? With a new actor who's going to be coming in and probably going to be doing material more like book 3 Matt. I mean, we'll see. I don't know how they're going to like end up explaining this way that, you know, things are changing a little bit because of the actor situation. But so I think that could definitely play into it. And the fact that, like, you know, part of how he was behaving in this scene, or in this episode, what am I saying? In this season, part of how he was behaving in this season is because of the dagger. And, you know, that is going to change. So we can expect to see a different kind of character going forward, and it might work.
Okay, Victor Sanchez has a comment that he thinks Matt has decided that he would just peace out of this whole mission that they're on to save the world and just be a horse trader with horses. This is what I'm talking about. Just go to some cool pub or library and just hang out. I don't want to be at Hogwarts when the fucking battle for the world happens.
Right.
I want to be there when it's normal and nothing is going on.
Totally, yeah.
Did you ever see that South Park
Matt
where
would
Butters
want to do that? Totally.
is talking to the normal kids, and he's like, this is why they're going on adventures. Like, this is why nobody wants to hang out with you, because shit like this happens.
Yeah.
He's like, now I'm sitting in the middle of a jungle, and now there's laser beams shooting out of my eyes. Like, this is why nobody likes you guys.
Yeah. No, I'm very much like, I just want to hang out in the cool world with the cool stuff. I don't want to do anything to save it. I don't want to do any of that stuff. No quests, no fetch quests, no side quests. Kind of how I
play video games, actually. I don't play anything that's not open world. I'm like, screw the mission. I'm going to go have fun and like build my arsenal.
I spend all of my Red Dead Redemption training horses and fishing.
I do it in Far Cry.
I play Skyrim just to meet people and talk.
Yeah, 100%. I don't play Far Cry to beat Far Cry. I play Far Cry just to wander off into the mountains and see what I can find.
Does Matt not go through the ways?
In the book, he does.
In the book, he does. It looks like he won't be going through the ways in the.
It looks like he does not go through the ways, and so my best guess, until we see more that might contradict this, is that the actor Barney Harris. What happened was they filmed the first 6 episodes essentially. That ended in March 2020 when they had to shut down for the pandemic, and then they resumed in fall. I forget exactly what month, maybe September 2020, and then that's when they started filming episodes 7 and 8. Best guess is that Barney Harris did not come back after that COVID shutdown, and so was not available to film episodes 7 and 8.
That's just
I see. Right. Okay.
As a professional gossip hound, that just really tickles all of my instincts.
You gotta get behind that.
And
no one's talking.
No one's talking. I guess because of NDAs and whatever, no one is talking. There are no, like, you know, there's not even really any rumors out there other than people just like speculating and pulling things out of, you know, thin air. But no one knows. And we probably won't know for a while because of said NDAs. I mean, eventually maybe these things come out, but it might take a while. So
yeah.
What effect will that have on the story if Matt doesn't go through the ways?
So, I mean, in terms of just looking at like the rest of what's in book one, assuming that they're roughly following that plot line for the last 2 episodes, I think it's very doable without Matt there. The bigger question is then how what sort of explanation they give for his absence. And there's certainly, they've left themselves open with some options to how he could re-enter the story and what he could have been doing in that interim. So I don't know. And then to me, a lot of it just depends on how they handle those things. But yeah, I don't think I'm sure it took some rewrites and whatnot. But in terms of what actually happens in the last couple of episodes, so I mean, spoiler alert, guys, Matt's not the dragon.
I never thought it was. He's the coolest of those kids, and I'm like, this dude is either going to turn out evil or he's going to die. Like,
cool ones always do.
Interesting. Anyway, and just not to say that he's not an important character, because like I don't want people to get too caught up in like the dragon is the only important one. Like,
well, I feel like that's why they're underselling the prophecy. Is it so people don't get too hung up on trying to outguess that?
Yeah. And that is not the only important thing. And in fact, it probably kind of sucks to be the dragon. But so it's not a bad thing for Matt. He's really glad that he's not the dragon. But as you can probably gather, the fact that he could not be in the last 2 episodes and have it be okay kind of rules that out there. Oh, well.
So Noelle has a question. I read that 3 more characters will be added to season 2. Any thoughts?
More than 3, I would say.
I would say 2.
I would assume they're going to add a lot of characters.
A lot of characters.
Yeah.
But
so I'm not sure if there's 3 in particular, like in terms of casting announcements that Noelle might have heard about. I know there was one relatively recently where they talked about some season 2 characters that are, that had been cast. So maybe those are the ones she was thinking of, but there's definitely more than 3. So like some of them have been announced already, like only a few that we've had like names for the characters given, and a couple more that we know, but we don't know what roles they're playing yet. So yeah, there'll definitely be more characters in season 2. It's quite a wide roster of characters in the books, and I'm sure they won't all make it in, but lots to choose from.
And I can't decide if more characters will help or hurt. Because in some ways, I feel like the characters we're dealing with, we're not getting enough about them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I want more of just what we've already met. But then I also kind of feel like if you expand the world, because this episode, they introduced a new character, and it's immediately one of the best scenes that they've done is that intro when the fancy seat lady is, I almost said Michelin lady. That's not the name of her title. But when she was introduced as a kid, that's a great scene. That's great world building and context.
Yep.
And then later meeting her and finding out about her secret relationship with Moraine was like very humanizing for these incredibly powerful sort of untouchable characters. So
totally.
I kind of feel like you could add characters and immediately make the world building better, or it could just be like, no, we're not spending enough time with anybody.
And that's definitely something they'll have to figure out how to balance, because I mean, in these next 2, I mean, just so you know, also in these next 2 episodes, we're going to meet some more characters also, because we're going to a different location.
Yeah.
So, right. Yeah. The Eye of the World. Can you give us a little glimpse into what the Eye of the World is?
I'm not totally sure how much I can without being spoilery, because they told you something in the show, and let's just say it's not entirely accurate to what it is in the books. So are they changing it, or is this an instance where people think they know something that they don't actually know? So that is hard to talk about without getting into potential spoilers here. So
they've described it pretty much with, it's where the Dark One is buried.
I feel like it would be very interesting.
So that's where his prison is. They said that his prison is at the Eye of the World, which, so anyway, maybe that's true, or maybe they think they know something that they don't. But I will say that they do have to go into what is called the Blight to find the Eye of the World. And the Blight is an area of the world that is sort of completely taken over by the Dark One's influence.
Yep.
So this is where people, the shadow spawn are from. And you have basically, people generally don't go there, but if they go there, they're going there to fight shadow spawn. Like there's no people that are going to go there for any other reason. and it's just like a wasted land. It's kind of Mordor like, that sort of thing. And so they have to go into the Blight to find the Eye of the World, and they're going through an area which is called the Borderlands. The Borderlands are called that because they're right on the border with the Blight, and
which is where Lan is from. I think
that is where Lan is
from the books.
That is correct. Lan is from the Borderlands, and in fact, we'll find out more about Lan, I'm pretty sure, this next episode, because there's something very unique about Lan's history in regards to where he's from. So one thing that is a constant reality of living on the Borderlands is you're facing constant threat from Shadow Spawn, and like they're encroaching on human land, and so that's where we're going, to the Borderlands Spawn, and then the Blight.
The Trollocs came from there that invaded the Two Rivers, correct?
Right. We still don't know how the
monsters
got to the Two Rivers undetected, but yes, that's where they came from.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the Never-Ending Story scarred me for life. And I'm not joking. I feel like there's a generation of people that are just like walking around kind of with a permanent emotional wound from that movie or book. Sure. It's terrible in the book too.
Oh, I never read the book, but yeah.
Oh yeah, you think The Swamp of Sadness is bad as a movie? Read it. It's awful.
Okay. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but yeah.
Is it worse than The Fire Swamp?
Is there? Yeah. Oh yeah. Way worse. Is there anything as bad as Artax and The Swamp of Sadness in the rest of the Wheel of Time? Because I literally can't do it. Like this is the thing of like with fantasy, or big reason I don't read it is like, I don't want to like characters that just suffer horrible, emotionally devastating deaths. So I just kind of skip this whole genre.
Let's see. It's more like emotional devastation. Not necessarily that they suffer emotionally devastating deaths. I don't want to say there's none of that. But some of these characters are put through the ringer in terms of...
See, that just makes me not want to get attached to anyone. This is why I sailed through Game of Thrones. People were like, oh, I'm so mad that XYZ happened. I'm like, I don't care. I only cared about the dragons. I refuse to get attached to human characters. And even the dragons, I was like, some of these are going to die because they're not investing in Viserion and Rhaegal. So I only got attached to Drogon.
I will say Robert Jordan was not as big on just like killing characters as frequently. I mean, it's a very long epic fantasy series. Some people die. All right. I don't feel like it's like a totally crazy spoiler to tell you that some people die. But given all of that, he wasn't as fond of.
Just, is anything bad going to happen to the cool ogre guy? Like,
you're okay.
Honestly, like if anything happened, like if the pouty boy drowns, I don't care. Like if the grumpy guy falls into a mud pit and disappears,
I definitely understand.
But if the cool ogre guy,
I feel the same
bad
way.
Happens to him.
Loyal is wonderful. He is a pure soul. I love and adore him, and I just want to protect him. And yes, if anything horribly bad happened to him, I would never recover. I'll just tell you that.
Love the actor too.
I love him.
I really like that he speaks so slowly. He's always later than everyone else to everything. I just like the perspective that he's obviously living a much longer life than everybody else. And he's just
that's what the last episode I compared him to the Ents from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I liked the Ents. I liked the Ents for the same reason, where they're like, we just have this. I like any world that you set up. If there's some character or characters who have just that like flip perspective. It's why I like Doctor Strange in the Avengers, is like his perspective on the world is so different from everybody else's. He's always got a different agenda. So I like the Ents because they're like, we've seen all of this crap before. None of this is new. I like this ogre guy because he's like, oh, you humans, you're just always running around like little ants. Like, I just like that that's his perspective.
That makes the world feel bigger. I love him. He's such a cool character, and the actor is really doing a wonderful job. So
he is.
I love Loyal.
Can you shed some light?
I would love to know how much of this is makeup, like how much of his look is makeup versus CGI. I would love to know.
Oh, it's not.
It's prosthetic.
It looks prosthetic. It looks makeup.
Is it entirely?
It looks. I mean, I don't know.
They talked about how they specifically didn't want to do his character with VFX because it would have cost so much to do every shot that he's in that they would have had to use him as a character less, and they didn't want to do that. So the way his look is a bit different than how it's described, and I think it's down to that because if you wanted to do some of the things that the way it's described in the books, you probably would have to do VFX to have it look good.
Well, he
And they
looks
didn't
very
want to do it.
cool. Like he
Yeah.
looks really cool.
He doesn't look human, which is, I think, to
No.
me, like the main criteria. He doesn't look human. They have an actor who can act through all of that, and that's
Yes.
wonderful.
A pretty darn good actor.
And his voice is fantastic, and that is very much as described.
I mean, again, I just want to hang out in the library and have him read me stories. Like just
We all do. Yes.
Can-
Loyal is the best boy. I just adore
He's a
him.
great character. Can you
Yeah.
shed a little light on the Ogiers, the tree singers, and tell us
Yeah.
like what they have to do with the waypoints
Yeah.
and what are the
I think
waypoints?
we're going to find out a lot more about that in the next episode, because that was something that was kind of like lighted over in episode 6. Like, why was Moraine asking for Loyal's help with the Waygate? That wasn't
Yep.
super clear. Because then like she opens it without his help or anything. But I think what we're going to find is that he is going to be their guide inside the ways, because the ways were built for Ogier. And so basically the history is that male channelers took refuge in the setting where the Ogier lived for a while, 3,000 years before, during the breaking, for a time. Not they didn't stay there forever, but the Ogier helped them, and they returned help by creating what's called the ways, this means of traveling, and so Ogier are very familiar with them. And I think it'll be explained more in the next episode. But Loyal will be their guide. People don't travel them anymore because of how dangerous they are. But at one point, Ogier used them frequently.
Right. Explain what can happen in there, though. I mean, should we know like why it's dangerous, or
you shouldn't know yet? I'm
Shouldn't
sure it will be
know
explained in episode 7, because that's where
Okay.
we're going to get their journey there. But yes, there's great risk. It's tied into the corruption on the male half of the power. So because male channelers created the ways, the corruption that was involved in making them then has sort of gradually taken over the ways. And that's why it's completely dark. When they open up and you see it's totally dark in there. And then it's done other things too. So, the idea is that if if the ways were working as they were supposed to, you would travel these pathways, and you would be able to get places much faster. It's sort of outside normal time and space. You'd be able to get to another place much faster than you would
that's what
by
you're saying.
traveling there by normal means. But then the corruption has taken over, made it dark, and some parts of it have been ruined because of the corruption. And then there's another aspect to it as well that no one really understands, but it's another danger that should be explained in the next episode.
I remember this being a really cool part of the books, where I was just like, wow.
People have been teasing it, and actors in
Yep.
the show have been teasing it. So I'm really excited to see how it is. And they built like a whole huge set to do it in. So that's really cool.
I like and that's the thing with Loyal is I like prosthetics. I like it's actually like when they build sets, like I would take a monster movie or a horror movie back when they actually did it, like the original The Thing, or like one with like Kurt Russell in the Arctic, where it's like prosthetics and it's like machines and mechanics and puppets and stuff. I'll take that over CGI all day for whatever. It just seems much more authentic and enjoyable for me.
Yeah, there's actually a phenomenon that happens with our eyes and brains and the way we process things. That we, at a certain point, we can tell when things are fake, and when
uncanny valley. I think
well, it's not just the uncanny valley. It's even if something is seamless, we can still detect the inauthenticity, and a lot of it is actually happening on the subconscious level. And when you cross a certain threshold, is our brains start rejecting what they're seeing. It's actually a huge problem for people who are developing AI in virtual environments, is overcoming that hurdle. And it's a little bit, the uncanny valley is tied into that phenomenon, but it's a much bigger neurological thing that's going on. And it actually happened in movies in the 2000s when VFX got really good really fast, and everybody went crazy, and everything was manufactured, and people started not liking it. And so then you saw in the early 2010s this like massive pushback towards practical effects, practical makeup, and using more built sets, even though they can be more at this point. A built set can be much more expensive than a virtual environment, but it's because of the way we look at things and process things. And I like the White Tower. I'm sure there's some FX in there, that there's some enhancement going on, but you can tell by the way people are moving in space and the way that they're interacting with objects. You can tell like they're standing in a room, all that stuff is real. They're touching things like, and it just makes so much of a difference of how tangible and real things feel. It's also why we don't like things that are too pretty and clean. So I like when you're looking through the White Tower that everything is white, but you see scuff marks on the floor, you see wear marks on walls, you see like rumples on the bed. Like
the appeal for me for Cowboy Bebop, even though it's canceled. Newsflash.
Man,
it got canceled.
I cannot imagine how bad their viewer numbers were.
Yeah, it said it.
I really enjoyed the show,
but that was the thing that Sarah and I mentioned in the first couple episodes of the podcast talking about it. Is it's lived in. It seemed authentic and it seemed genuine because it was kind of dirty and worn down. Whereas it's
the perfect example of the phenomenon is original Star Wars, where everything's a little bit dirty, a little bit dented. Even the Empire stuff is a little bit worn out. And then the prequels, which are tons of green screen, everything looks super clean, super shiny. And people were just like, I don't like that. I don't like how that looks.
Yeah. And that was around the time of when this effects like blew up, you know.
And then so here they come back with the sequel trilogy, and no matter how you feel about the stories, they look amazing. And it's a lot of practical puppets, practical sets, practical stunts, real explosions.
Stuff looks lived in.
And they're back to kind of everything isn't sleek and shiny. Everything looks a little bit dented and worn. So I did like when I was looking around I was pausing in certain places and kind of looking around, and you can actually see like this is a beautiful room, and it's obviously this pristine kind of place, but you can see there's scuff marks on the floor. There's scratches on things. Like her bed isn't perfectly made. Her desk is messy. Like it's just those little bits that kind of tell you like people live here. People have lived here. They're using the space, and it just looks, I think my favorite thing about the show so far, besides Daniel Henney, who is just so hot.
And just good.
Completely objectify him because he's a really good actor, but he just looks spectacular in this show. But it's the sets, it's the environments, it's even when they're out in like a field or a stream, it's the way things are photographed, the way that they're shooting space. Like it's just so good looking. And I feel like you could put the episodes on mute and just put on music, and they would go by just very beautifully. Because it looks
you could put on the beautiful soundtrack of Wheel of Time.
Yeah,
the music in this episode especially was really, really good.
Really
I
good
loved
stuff.
the singing. Like the original songs were great.
Yeah.
Lauren Balfe is the composer, I believe, right? Is that correct?
Lauren Balfe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that any relation to Catriona? Who?
I don't think so.
Don't know.
Who plays in the Outlander?
I know who you're talking about. I don't know though. Maybe, but. There were a couple of good questions that I saw pop up.
No, they're not related.
They're not related. Okay. Thank you. There are other ogre characters.
Very popular question.
She asked other ogre characters.
So that sort of got answered in chat too. Like, we do meet other ogre in the books. None of them are as big of a character as Loyal is, in terms of impact, but we do meet others. And then going back, someone had commented on, so if, the ways were made for Ogier who don't channel, like why did Moraine have to channel to open the Waygate?
Yeah.
And I think we don't know the answer to that in terms of the show yet, because in the book there was another way to open the Waygates that had nothing to do with channeling. Right. And I don't know if there's sort of something where they've changed it for some reason in the show, or if there's going to be multiple ways that you can open a Waygate, or maybe there's something different here. I mean, I can conceive of ways why you might, like if they're no longer safe to travel, maybe they decided at some point, hey, we're going to make this less accessible, because it used to be anybody could go in and out.
In the books, weren't they closed because they were dangerous?
They weren't initially, in the sense that like if you could find a Waygate and you had the key to enter it, like anybody could go in. Okay. And then but I could see certainly a scenario where people might have said, you know what, we should probably close these off. They're pretty dangerous. So maybe they changed it. But we haven't really gotten that explanation. But in the books, initially, you did not need to channel to enter the ways.
Explain what exactly does it mean when they... I want to get back to the ogres real quick before we move on.
Ogiers.
Tree singer. Why are they called tree singers?
Not all of them are, but if you are interested in learning a little bit more about Ogier, there is an extra little, I don't know if you've been watching these little like animated shorts that go with each episode that talk about some of like the history of the world.
This is great.
There
I'm
is one
unaware
for
of these. Is this on Amazon too?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So it used to be you could access them by as you're watching the episode, like either like on mobile or on like a PC, just by like tapping or like hovering over the screen, and then there'd be like bonus content. You could access it in there, or if you're watching it on a TV, I think you need like a Fire Stick or whatever they call those things,
Okay.
Amazon
Yeah.
Fire TV or whatever, to access it. Now I think they've moved the animated like bonus content into the episode list. Someone was saying so, like
Okay.
they're in with the other episodes now.
Nice. I
But
need
there
to
is
watch
one
that.
on Ogier, so that will show you a little bit more
Cool.
about that. But the tree singer refers to a skill that some Ogier have of sort of singing to trees, and then the trees respond to the singing and can it can shape wood in different ways that
Huh.
just is responding to the Ogier's voice as they're singing to the tree.
That's dope.
Right, which brings me to
Very dope.
I seem to remember from the books that Ogiers were contracted, sought after, and then contracted to be architects and builders for humans.
Right. They also are
Building.
extremely skilled with stone masonry, but they consider that to be sort of like, oh yeah, we can do that, whatever. It's no big deal. Like
Hmm.
they don't really care about that. They care about the trees and the groves, and tree singing is something that they
Right.
prize very much.
They're steadings.
Yes, but the making, everyone else is like, oh my God, Ogier, then there's stone masonry. It's so gorgeous and wonderful, and we want you to do that. And they're just like, whatever, that's nothing. They do
That's
it anyway.
funny.
Those are the kind of details that I love. So I hope that comes out, because I do think there was when we met him. I feel like somebody said something about architect. I feel like they've mentioned
People
the
call
architecture
him
thing.
builder. Yeah,
Builder,
builder
yep.
is a common human name for Ogier. They call them builders, and then sometimes they're called tree brothers. So they have other names that people.
I have been I'm watching on a smart TV, and I have seen, as someone has commented in the chat, the animated bonus content is integrated in the episode list. So if you go
is
to
now,
like further content or more content or whatever, it'll show you the episodes and then
cool.
the animated. I haven't watched them yet because I'm trying to just see how much I can understand just from the context of the show itself. Like
Right.
I finally caved last week and like Googled some stuff because I'm like, I'm not remembering people's names. Like I need to kind of get some of this stuff pinned down. But I'm trying to sort of not take a lot of extras. Like I'm trying to just, how much can I grasp just from watching the show? Like,
Yeah.
how is that functioning?
So for
but
anyone,
after this is all over, I'm going to go back and watch some of that stuff.
yeah, those are great.
Me
They're
too.
short. They're like 3 minutes, and they're really cool. But for anyone who is wanting that kind of reminder of like, who is this character? Like not remembering names, and you haven't read the books, and you don't want spoilers. There is a new like TV show focused wiki. So they only have spoilers for the TV show, like up into current, and they don't have any book spoilers in there. So that would be a good resource for people who are like, yeah, which Aes Sedai was that, and like what was that name and stuff, but you don't want to like Google it because you might get book spoilers.
So, in the episode 5, we had the funeral of Karene,
Yes,
but I don't remember her in the books. I got to be honest. Was
she and her warder are only in the prequel.
Evidently, she
Okay.
wasn't important.
well, she was in the prequel to the books.
Yes, she was in the
A
prequel.
A New Spring. Okay,
And,
that's what
but
I
yes,
remember.
they brought her into the present, and my theory on that was
Cannon fodder.
they wanted to kill an Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And I guess they would pick one that like was not in the main storyline, so it didn't matter that they were.
She was the
killing her.
red shirt of the Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
She got taken out.
It was really effective in communicating
yeah.
that bond.
Yeah,
like, it
absolutely.
really did a good
Absolutely.
job of like displaying this is because you always want to show, not tell. So it was a great example of like, here's what it
Demonstrate, don't
means.
explicate. Right.
Yeah, to be a warder, to have this bond, to be affected in this way, like you really get it. So that was maybe she wasn't important, maybe she was a red shirt, but that was really effective.
Absolutely.
Storytelling.
I
Yeah,
totally
absolutely.
agree. I thought it was wonderful what they did with those characters and bringing them in and showing that. Yeah,
Right.
very sad, but people are going to remember that. People are going to really understand this bond in a different way.
It was borderline swamp of sadness stuff where I was
And
like,
I'm
I like
glad
this
you-
guy. I'm not happy that this happened.
And I'm glad you said that people will remember that, because that with I can't remember the false dragons brought that up in his speech when he was talking to Sawan. He said something about, he's like, do you think people are going to remember how many of it it, the one thing he said they were going to remember was that I took out one of the Aes Sedai. I killed the green or whatever one. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about spoilers. I actually don't give a shit about spoilers. I have to review this stuff, and I feel like part of judging the show is judging its competency in communicating the story without extras.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm trying to just stick with what are they showing me in the show itself. I don't want to go into, like, when this is all over, I will watch the animated stuff. I want to watch the behind the scenes stuff, especially if they're talking about like the set building and whatnot. But I don't want to watch any of that stuff until the show is over, because I only want to go off what they're showing me and what I can discern from what they're showing me.
That's a great point. So I usually watch the episodes twice, once on Friday and once on Sundays before we do the show. But so I didn't watch episode 6 for a second time because I really enjoyed it. And I think I got like a ton out of this episode. It was very straightforward, and it also like gave a bunch of backstory. So I didn't feel like I missed anything second time. But I will go back and watch it. But I really enjoyed episode 6. Episode 5 I wasn't too enthused about, but a second watch through, I did get a little bit more. I was a little bit sad that we lost Steppen, because I thought the actor did a fantastic job as that character. And this show needs quality actors. I think that's what's really lacking. But I mean, the 4 kids, to me, I'm not impressed.
Rebecca, we've been a little in previous episodes. We've been a little hard on the kids, and I know they're not literally kids. I know they're all like in their 20s. But to be fair to them, we have kind of said like the characters are not terribly well written. They're not getting a lot to do. Like, I feel like they spend a lot of time spouting exposition at one another. So it's maybe they're not getting the most to work with. And I've also kind of thought they're young. They might not have the experience of the older actors of kind of pulling a little bit of a weaker script up and sort of elevating. Older actors kind of know how to do that because they've just been around forever. They've dealt with good, bad, everything in between. I do feel like the older actors are crushing it. Like, they're all really, really good. Sophie Okonedo, the minute she popped up, I was like, because she's such a good actress. And so she has just I think 3 scenes as an adult, and all
maybe more,
great.
but I mean, it's all great. I mean, I don't know, I guess it's hard for me to judge. I mean, to me, like, I know these characters really well, but so the younger characters, like, to me, I feel like all of them are embodying the characters I know. So they're very familiar to me, and they are portraying these characters in a way that I know. And so that is easier for me to connect with them. I think some of them have had some great moments. So like, I think in episode 5, there were some great moments with Perrin and Egwene, like where I thought they both did a wonderful job.
The torture scene was intense, but it was really good.
Really good. So I think they both, crushed that. I think Nynaeve has had some awesome moments. And I think Matt has done a wonderful job, because to me, again, I did not like the character in the books for the first, couple of books. So I like him in the show, which is like a revelation to me, because I didn't like him initially. So anyway, I think he did a good job, but I will agree that he has not had much to do in the past couple of episodes. So like, I came to like him over the first 4 episodes, and then episode 5 and 6, like, he's not doing that much. And then Rand is, to me, not as well developed in the show as so far as the others. So I think the actor is doing a good job with, he feels familiar to me. Like, he feels like a character that I know, but I will agree that he's not had as much to work with. So he has not really had like a moment to really shine. Like, I feel like the others have had their moments to shine.
He had the moment where he confronted the evil girl and broke down the door.
Yeah,
that was probably his most standout moment. Not only because it was like, oh, he's super strong, this is a thing he can do, but also because it was it's one of the few moments, because he's just so like, Egwene, like that's like his whole personality. So it was one of the few moments I'm like, you guys are clearly not going to end up together. So like, start making some decisions that have nothing to do with her.
These actors, like you said, they're not kids. In the books, they were kids. Do you think they made a mistake maybe giving them kid lines? Like,
I mean, I don't know. I do feel like they are aged up a bit in terms of like their behavior in the show compared to their behavior in the books. I think there is a difference. Now, you can only go so far with it, maybe, because you still have the fact that like they are from this super isolated village, you know,
Right.
and so they really don't know stuff about the outside world.
And that's
Right,
what's
rural,
driving me
very
crazy
rural.
about Ninian. Like, I get that she's like the wisdom or whatever. And I love that line that Moraine had where she's like, you got to start.
That was a good
Moraine
line.
showed teeth with a couple lines because
That
remember
was-
when she was with the red eyes and I, she said something about if you
Yeah.
tell anybody about
Yeah.
these kids, I'm going to
No,
tell
Mar-
everybody else about him or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like,
Maureen was
Right.
on fire in this episode.
No, she was
Ooh.
really, she was coming hard. But like
Yeah.
with Ninian, she has to be mature enough to like get out of her crappy little village and go, oh, there's a lot I don't know about the world. Maybe I should listen to someone else. Like her
Yeah,
sheer, I don't need her to be likable. I really don't. Like, I'm fine with characters that are unlikable on purpose. What I'm not liking about Ninian or whatever her name is she does stupid things for stupid reasons that don't benefit her character development wise. I'm just like, oh, I need her to be a little bit sharper than this.
Yeah, I mean, this is where she starts out, and I think there's some of that in the book too, whereas like initially you meet her and she's got a great deal of stubbornness. I mean, they all do to some extent, but her perhaps in particular, you know, she is very stuck in her worldview. And, you know, maybe the fact that she is just a little bit older, right? She's just a little bit older and she's lived in that very specific, you know, this is the way of life for just a little bit longer. And it makes her just a little bit more stuck in that. And yeah, so it takes her a little bit longer to start to take in all of this, you know, new information she's getting out there in the world.
It's almost not even about that, because I'm fine with her being suspicious of the Aes Sedai. Like, I find it interesting, especially that the evil guy kind of made the point, the further you go from here, the less people like and trust you. I'm like, interesting, good to know. Good to know that, and she's from like a far region, so she probably has a lot of suspicion. And she seems like she doesn't really want to join, which I get it. Don't join. Seems crappy. Seems like a bad deal. But I mean more in terms of like things that are happening to advance the plot. It's relying a lot on her being a little bit dumber than she probably should be. Which is common. And I call it out in horror movies all the time. There's a problem with kids in horror movies that you can just count on them to do the exact dumbest thing that's going to get everybody killed. And it's just kind of bad writing.
Not even horror movie. Anything with kids. They're going to do the dumbest thing possible.
But it's really obvious in horror movies where you can just count on children.
That always annoys me in horror movies.
They're just plot devices to get people killed. But it's that kind of thing of like, oh, she's just being dumb in this moment to advance the plot. And if you can't advance your plot by making your characters not dumb, I just have I don't like that. That's not writing that interests me.
I guess I look at it as different. Like, I don't think she's dumb per se. I think she is stubborn.
No, I think they're making her a little bit dumb.
I think she's stubborn to a dumb degree. So I think it is like it's her distrust of Aes Sedai and her like being stuck in this worldview. And that is something that she does have to grow and you know, move past, because she would be stuck if she can't
I'll be super happy when we leave this behind.
Like, this is the farthest they've ever been from the two rivers. You know, all of these characters, they've never been to a big city.
No.
Right? They're country folk.
Say that? They didn't actually say that though, did they?
No,
I mean,
there was a super Samwise moment there. If I
Yeah,
take
no,
one
no,
more step, this will be the farthest away from
that's
the
just
Shire.
Right.
Yeah, no,
I feel like contextually, it's pretty obvious that they are further from home than they've ever been.
Right. Okay.
No, none of them have ever been in any environments like this before whatsoever. Yeah.
Right. We drew the obvious comparison to the Stark children with the four children, and granted, the characters, the actors who play the Stark children, they weren't good actors in the beginning of Game of Thrones. They sort of came into. I mean, Kit Harington was a bit stiff. First, I forget Sophie. I forget her last name, but Sophie Turner and Maisie Williams. You know, they were just, you know,
literal children.
They were literal children who were learning to act on the job. Do you think the actors in this one will kind of maybe step it up a little bit? Because I mean, they're getting out acted big time by the veterans.
No, I think they will. You know, given the chance, because I think they're all showing to me like that they have skills, and given the right material and working with some really strong actors, like and they're being put through their paces here. Like, absolutely, I 100% think that they'll rise to it. Yeah.
Right. Any questions for Rebecca before we thank her for her time and get out of
Will
here?
you come back next week? We love having you on.
I can come back for the finale. I
All
can be
right.
back for
That'll
episode.
Fair
work.
enough.
That'll work.
Excellent. And Sarah has our full disclosure. Sarah's seen all 8 episodes, correct? No, not yet.
Nope,
Oh,
she
The
correct. You haven't.
screeners stop with episode 7.
They stopped
So.
with episode 7.
Oh, okay.
Wow, very nice. So you got one more episode left. Sarah, any questions for Rebecca before we let her get on her way?
Not yet. What's your favorite moment in the show so far?
Great
Favorite
question.
moment in the show. Oh God, that's so hard to choose. I mean, it's easier for me to choose by episode. So like, I mean, my favorite episode I think is still episode 4. And my favorite moment in this episode was Maureen and Swan and their like private scene together.
Love it.
I love that scene.
Me too.
But there have been a lot of great moments. You know, and that's the one thing I felt like even in some episodes where I feel like it's, you know, there's some things that I like was questionable or I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but there have been really great moments in all of the episodes for me. So it's definitely working on that in that sense.
Right. All right. My last question would be, this is one that bugs me every time we come on and talk about Wheel of Time is, is the show more intended for book readers, or did the show creators have to kind of decide to satisfy non-book readers, book readers, and is that kind of a mistake? Should they have taken maybe one path or the other?
I don't think you can do completely one or the other,
right,
and have a successful show. I don't think you can. And if you had to only pick one and try and be successful with that, it would have to be non-readers. Like you just can't make a show as popular a series as this is. You cannot make a show that is calculated specifically to please book readers alone and have it then be a successful show. It won't work. So I think they're trying to do both to some extent, but if you had to skew in one direction or the other, it would be skewed towards non-book readers in what their intention should and hopefully are, because you need those kind of numbers, you know, and there are going to be some book fans that are not going to like it regardless of what you do, because you literally can't film the books as they are. That is unfilmable. You cannot do it. So
and there's 8 seasons, Sarah.
And this is like really
14
basic
books, dude. I tell you,
like this is just what an adaptation is. It's very basic, and yet there's a lot of people out there on the internet who apparently don't know this, don't understand this.
It kind of the same thing that happened with Game of Thrones. You know, they couldn't fit everything in. You know, they had to change stuff, and people were upset.
It's its own thing. Like there are two things, you know, there's the books and there's the show, and they're their own things. And I think trying to capture, you know, the heart of what people love about the books, trying to have the characters feel like the characters that you know, trying to capture the most important, like, you know, through line and themes of the books and have that come across. But at the same time, be completely willing to just tell the story in a different way. And, plot points will be different, and you're going to use characters in different ways and all of that.
That was actually
going to be willing to do that.
My question for you, is there anything with their interpretation so far that you liked how they did it, whether it was different from the book or like something that executed well that was a story in the book? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I like a lot of things that are different. So, I mean, okay, so here's, in my opinion, a good example that is kind of a more straightforward, like how you adapt a section of a book, a long book. Okay, so you have like the part of the story where the groups are separated. You have this group here and that group there. So just looking at like Rand and Matt and their part of the story from Shadar Logoth to, in the book it's Caemlyn, not Tarvalon, but you know, from the Shadar Logoth to Tarvalon. There's a ton of chapters in there. They go to lots of different inns. They end up on different farms. Different farmers give them rides on carts. They're with Tom for part of it, but not all of it. And like, you cannot film it that way. There's way too many locations. You can't have like 12 different locations. And it goes on for a while. So they basically compressed all of that into 2 episodes and 2 major locations. You had a location that was barely mentioned in the book, but what they used in the show was Breen Spring, this mining town where they encounter a dark friend, and they also meet Tom there. That's different. And then in the next episode, it's the Grinwell farm, and then the Fade attack and whatever. So I loved how they handled that section of the book and adapting it, because you have two significant locations. You have two different little groups of characters. Tom is consistent in both of them, but it's a fewer number of characters they interact with, a fewer number of locations, but you get some really significant scenes out of those episodes, and scenes that I think work really well. I think Dana worked really well in episode 3, and I think they really got us invested in the Grinwells through that little girl and Matt's relationship with her. And then Tom as a character gets carried through, and we start to get a little bit more invested in him. I thought they handled that really great. It's completely different.
I want more Tom.
I do want more
honest,
Tom.
I love the actor. So
I do
far.
want more
I think he's
Tom.
great.
Hopefully we get more Tom.
Sufficiently mysterious and a pretty good singing voice as well.
Very good. Yeah.
Right.
And just interesting story of his own as to why he's helping them. Why does he care? And we got that in there, and that was interesting. He's a good storyteller, so that was a good scene. So I liked how they handled that very well. And it's very different, but there's all these familiar threads to it of let's we're going to meet a dark friend, and we're going to go to an inn, and we're going to go to a farm, and people are going to help them, people are going to try to harm them, and so lots of familiar stuff, but told in a very different way and very condensed.
Awesome.
I think what Noelle's saying down there below is exactly what I was trying to say earlier, was that if they would have had just maybe one little backstory scene like Suan, I think we might be more invested in the 4 or 5 Taveran.
Yeah. I think, okay, so I don't know if they're going to bring this in. I think they might, but there was in the bonus features for episode 1, there's an episode still from a scene that's not in that episode. So either they filmed it and they just cut it out, or that might end up coming in later as a flashback. And it's a scene with Rand and his father, Tam. It seems like that if we could have gotten them, or if we do get them eventually, that I think will really help with that. So I don't know if it's a consequence of that, got cut for time, or if it's going to come back in later. I'm not sure, but there are things like that I do think would have helped.
Great. Sarah, any last words?
No, just gotta get to the last 2 episodes of this show.
Yep. Sarah doesn't think it'll make it all the way to 8 seasons, but
and to be quite honest, though, I don't think any streaming show, The Witcher has 10 or 15 books. It's not getting 10 or 15 seasons. And I liked Bridgerton, and there's 8 books. They're not getting 8 seasons. These shows are so expensive. They spend so much money per episode, per season. Nothing is going to last that long. You're not going to spend 80, 90, $100 million for 8 years. You're just not. So the Lord of the Rings episode season, if that show comes out next year and it's a huge hit, they're still not getting 8 episodes. Nothing is going to last that long. And I feel like the people actually making the shows probably know that. They probably know we would love it if we got X amount of seasons. But if once you start going past 3, 4, 5, I'm you're really starting to push it. You need to sort of know, how are you going to tell your story in no more than 5 seasons? Because it's just the amount of money they're spending on this stuff. It's not tenable.
Mm-hmm. Can they do it in 5, Rebecca?
Not great, in my opinion.
Right. Kind of end up like Game of Thrones, maybe.
Yeah.
Or Lost.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
Could they, I mean, if they got 8, yeah, definitely. They could definitely do that. But 5, wouldn't be great.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
it might still be good in it.
It's like the inside baseball, getting into the economics of making these things. They just cost too much money. They just cost way too much money. So you kind of have to look at it as, how long can we spend this money?
It also depends somewhat too on when it comes to this show and the Lord of the Rings show, supposedly Jeff Bezos wants his Game of Thrones. And
sure, everybody does,
right? But he's has the money that whatever. Like if it shouldn't matter, right? In that sense, like they can put the money out. Is it going to like return it for them? I don't know, but maybe he wants the Game of Thrones more than he wants it to be a moneymaker. I have no idea.
Yeah, they can be loss leaders to a point. Yeah. Especially Amazon and Apple, they have all the money in the world. So these shows can be loss leaders. But there's still a point where eventually the budgets just matter. Like it's just what you run up against of we can't spend $100 million a year for 8 years. Like at a certain point, there's not that much audience. So I don't know. It's a problem for movies too. It's just there's not as much money out there as people think. So,
all right. Well,
anyway,
I'm going to keep watching. I'm enjoying it so far. Of course, I'm not your regular viewer. I'm a fantasy and sci-fi fan, and I've read all the books. Aaron, continue watching.
After this episode, I think, I'm going to keep watching. I do like it. I'm kind of looking for series to watch, but I think episode 6 had enough where they're setting up enough, and the episode didn't feel like that was the whole point of the whole dang episode was them setting something up. Stuff happened enough to keep me interested and looking forward to the future. So
it was my favorite episode for something that, for not a lot of stuff happening. It was great.
Well, enough, but okay, maybe not a lot happened, but enough things I remembered. Let me put it that way. There were enough memorable instances from this moment where more maybe happened in the past, but this one I can pick. Oh, that happened and this happened. An interaction between those two, and then they said this one enough happened to make me remember and actually appreciate the characters and the things going on.
Yeah,
cool.
And Sarah, not sure.
I mean,
yet.
there's only 2 episodes left. I'm for sure finishing the season.
Okay.
Then the question is, do I watch season 2? It's really going to depend on these next 2 episodes. Like it's really, because I don't know, because fantasy is not my bag to begin with.
It's my bag.
And I'm not
mine too.
Super loving the show. So unless they really kind of pull something out that makes you go, oh, now I have to know what happens.
Sure.
We'll see. But I'll finish the season. I mean, I definitely want to I've already done 6 episodes. I'll watch the last 2 just to see how they end it. Like, how do they bring it all together?
Right, and the episode 8 is it's extra long, isn't it? If I remember,
it might be. I don't
a half hour extra longer.
I don't know actually.
Maybe a supersized episode.
I don't know.
I seem to.
I thought they were all around an hour. I didn't think any of them were significantly over an hour, but I could be wrong.
Right. If
doesn't say yet.
If anybody's am I the only one watching Yellow Jackets on Showtime?
I watched the first couple episodes and haven't watched the rest, but that's one of
the last episode was freaking amazing.
I'm taking the week after Christmas off, and it's on my list of stuff to watch.
Really good, just crazy. If you grew up in the 90s, you'll love it. I didn't, of course. I'm an 80s product of the 80s, but I appreciate I was in my 20s in the 90s. But enjoy Yellow Jackets if anybody has a chance to get into it. It's a good, very good show.
And to Jeff Hanvey's point, HBO used to be famous for hugely expensive pilots that they would never air, that they would reshoot. And the new regime that took over after AT&T, it started in AT&T, but it's the new Discovery people, really, they're not doing that shit anymore. That's over. And that's kind of what I call the drunken sailor spending era.
Right.
It's wound down at Netflix. Netflix used to just throw huge chunks of money at people, and they're not doing that anymore. HBO's not doing that. That got prequel. That probably won't. Nothing like that will probably ever happen again under the new regime. Amazon Jennifer Salk is a little bit more careful with her budget assignments than her predecessor was. It's a little bit harder. The money's not. The industry's in trouble. On every level, the entertainment industry is really in it, and it's not just because of the pandemic. So there's bigger problems that everyone is facing. That's
interesting.
There's going to be a crash of blockbusters, the $1 billion blockbusters.
There's
that's going.
Many ways to watch. That's
going away. Maybe Marvel will survive because they're Marvel and everybody goes see their movies. Maybe Star Wars will survive because they're Star Wars. But the idea of we have a new $1 billion blockbuster every month.
Yeah,
that's ending. That's
a great point. Great point. Yeah, people are. I mean, truth be told, I tried to take my kids to a movie today to see Encanto, and couldn't get in. It was sold out.
Oh.
Just it would have been my 3-year-old's first movie ever, So we couldn't get in. My wife and I were like, well, what do we do now? Let's go to the Christmas market downtown. But
There you go, man.
yeah, so just I was like, I couldn't believe that the movie sold out. Just I didn't think movie theaters were packing them in. But
oh yeah, no, they'll still, especially around Thanksgiving, around Christmas,
yeah,
like they'll still. I'm not saying that's going to go
my
away
suspicion.
entirely. People still will go to the movies, but there's the sea change that was coming is crashing upon us now, and the financing problem is no one's really talking about it. But like the bottom everyone had to cancel their Saudi Arabia contracts. The bottom has fallen out of China. Like there's not as much money in the industry as people think. It's getting really hard to finance stuff. And unless you're pretty damn sure, which almost no one but Marvel can be, that what you're doing is going to generate that kind of money, you just can't finance anything.
This is a really heavy question. I mean, because people love going. A lot of people love going to the cinema.
Movies, but they're going less. They are going less.
If cinemas become a thing of the past, would you be surprised?
They won't become a thing of the past, but if you look at the trend, like 20 years ago when I was a kid, the average viewer of movies was going to the movies 5 to 6 times a year. That was in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Pre-pandemic, the average moviegoer was going to 2 to 3 movies a year. Post-pandemic, we're looking at maybe 1 to 2 movies a year. Steven Spielberg made the comparison that it'll be like
huge
Broadway.
Loss of revenue.
It'll be like a special thing that people do occasionally, like a Broadway show.
With higher ticket prices?
Yeah, probably, because they'll have to, they'll lose volume. They'll have to make it up. But also what'll be in theaters for the most part, and this is already happening, is going to be your Marvels, your Star Wars, your big fantasy spectacle space.
The established
movies.
ones, right.
I haven't been in a while to the movie theaters myself because of the pandemic. But Rebecca, last time you were in a movie theater?
I saw Dune in the movie theater, but before that, I don't know. It was pre-pandemic.
I can't. Yeah, for me too as well. Aaron, last time you were in the theater?
Went and saw Eternals, and then earlier this year I went and saw Godzilla versus Kong in theater, and we're probably gonna go see a movie this Sunday. We still like going out and doing it. So yeah.
Again, people still go to the people It's just they're going less. So there will be less movie theaters, and there will be less.
That's
movies
trouble
in those
for the
theaters.
industry, though. That's trouble for the industry, like you said.
They haven't found anything that replaces it, and they're spending movie money on TV shows now.
Could you see?
They don't actually make any of it back.
New movies be heading towards pay-per-view, a lot like how people watch boxing matches of Ultimate Fighting Challenge.
We're going to be in a hybrid model where, again, like the really top-tier stuff, and especially filmmakers, your Nolans, your Spielbergs, your Villeneuves, who have the power to say only theaters, like that stuff will be like I think they've already said the second part of Dune is like theater exclusive. They've already kind of healed that.
Guillermo del Toro would be one too. I know he's got the new movie coming out with Kate Blanchett and Bradley Cooper.
But all
Nightmare Alley,
all your mid-tier stuff, all your indie stuff, filmmakers without that kind of power, that don't have the power to say I want my movie in theaters only, and people actually have to do that. Will be like day and date releases, or they'll be in the theaters for a week and then we'll be on whatever streaming service the next week. It'll be a hybrid model is what it's already happening. Like the whole pandemic, they've been experimenting with different windows and day and date and week afters and all that stuff.
Well, we have gone way over time with Rebecca. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
Great combo. Thanks for having us. And we'll hopefully we'll see you back for the finale so you can give us your thoughts on the end of the season. And hopefully we'll try not to go over so long as we did today.
No, I enjoyed talking with you guys.
Thanks everyone for being here, and we will see you next Sunday.